Okay, welcome everyone. We are recording this Empathy Summit. We're getting started with it now. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Edwin Rutsch. I'm the director of the Empathy Center, which you see behind me in Santa Barbara. This is a new center that we're building to build a culture of empathy and support making empathy a primary social value in society. And our center's mission is to really build an empathy movement. And this summit today is about that. So thank you for joining us for this topic. This summit, Empaths, Why Empathy is Genius and How to Use Empathy to Heal Yourself in the World. And I'd like to now turn it over to our host for today, DJ Chandler, who's just done an amazing job of organizing and setting up this summit. So thank you so much, DJ, and take it away.
Oh, thank you, Edwin, and thank you for creating the Empathy Circle and founding the Empathy Center and for creating these summits. My name is DJ Chandler. I am an Empathy Circle facilitator trainer, and I identify as an empath. I am a huge fan of Dr. Judith Orloff and all of our speakers today. The culture of empathy movement combined with Dr. Orloff's work and the work of our other speakers can help bring healing to our world, one person at a time. This summit is free and open to the public. It is scheduled for 3 hours. The first half will be our 6 speakers, including our keynote, Dr. Judith Orloff. And the second half will be an empathy circle. And if you have never experienced an empathy circle before, I highly encourage you to stay until the end. I have found the process simple, easy, and transformational. We welcome all of you here today. Go ahead, Edwin.
Okay, so I'd like this event is put on by a whole team of volunteers. I'd just like to acknowledge our volunteers. I don't know if we have a screenshot of them for sharing that, but if not, thank you to all of our volunteers we've been meeting, hosting these circles, these summits every 4 months, and we have just this great team that is putting this together. So thank you to those volunteers, and you can too become a volunteer to host these summits in the future. So I invite you to contact us and connect with us. DJ?
Yes, so today's program will start with Dr. Judith Orloff's keynote. She will be speaking for 20 minutes, followed by a 20-minute question and answer period, specifically for Dr. Orloff. At any time during Dr. Orloff's program, you can post your questions or comments in the chat. Our summit volunteers will field these questions, and they will be read for you. Our summit volunteers that will be helping today with our question and answer are Jonathan Gordon. Go ahead and raise your hand, Jonathan. Ruth Cook. Ruth Cook will also be posting in the chat the different, contact information on our speakers. And Jenna Weiss. Jana will be keeping the time today for everyone. And during the speaker's time, they will get a 1-minute warning, and then they will get their 10-minute warning when they are speaking for 10 minutes. Please keep your questions for Dr. Judith Orloff brief and clear. Now, she may not have time to answer all the questions that you could pose or all the comments that you might make, but she does have 20 minutes. And during that time, Jonathan and Ruth and Jana and myself and Kara, I don't want to forget Kara, she will also be there fielding questions and doing the technology. And we're all volunteers, and we're very happy to be here today and to participate in something so wonderful. If you would like to, you can email me at facilitatorempathy@gmail.com if you have any questions at all about the summit, any questions that you would have for the speakers that you don't have a chance to find out how to get in contact with them, any question you might have for Dr. Orloff that you don't have time to answer. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to the wonderful Dr. Judith Orloff, the leader in what it is like to be an empath in today's chaotic and difficult and challenging world. Thank you very much for coming, Dr. Orloff.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here with this wonderful group of people, and everyone who is listening. Welcome from wherever you are. I have been traveling around for my book, do it on a book tour. So it's been really interesting for me to see the state of empathy, around this country. And it's and I'm able to talk to people and find out what's going on with them. What do they think empathy is? Why do they think it's they can't apply it? Why is it unrealistic? How is it helpful? So I love that, where I'm really able to find out about what people are thinking. And the book is about practical skills on how to develop empathy, basically. And it's, if you're in a situation such as if you're arguing with your spouse, or if you're with a coworker who's being difficult, or if you're with a friend who's a narcissist, how do you apply empathy? Why apply empathy? So the book is about specific situations and practicing empathy circles that Edwin in his beautiful group does. But it's how to make empathy practical. And when I was, I've been traveling around, and I asked people, what is the understanding of empathy? And many people feel that empathy is about giving 100% of the time. Like, whoever comes up to you, who asks you, I need this, I need you to listen, I need you to take me here. I'm going through this, I'm going through that. And we all, it's a human experience. So we're all going to be going through a lot. But people think that being empathic means saying yes to everybody, a lot of people. And I'm here to say that one of the messages of the book is that, no, that's not true. Not true at all. I'm a psychiatrist, I'm an empath. And so I'm a kind of a professional listener, and I mean, in a good way, in a great, great way. Listening to somebody, empathic listening is the most beautiful thing, to be able to listen. But one thing that I want to make clear about, as you develop empathy is the ability to attune to yourself and attune to another person and resonate with them and be in their shoes. And empathy is also finding empathy with yourself. That's a big, big part of empathy, as how I teach it, is that you have to learn self-empathy. And there's a chapter on self-empathy. And I've spoken to my therapist friends over the years, and it's everybody's, nearly everybody says it's so much easier to have empathy for other people than it is to have empathy for ourselves. And empathy, as I'm presenting it in the book, is a healing tool. To find empathy for oneself instead of beating yourself up is a way to activate the heart energy and open up the healing in your body. And it's a very powerful thing when you could sit with yourself and, say, you're a wonderful person, and that was a horrible situation. I'm glad that it's done, and we'll figure out what to do next later after you take a rest, or something like that. Just finding lovely words to say to yourself, to comfort yourself. And this crazy world we're living in, we have to practice self-comfort. I mean, even let's say you made a mistake or you did something that you regret. That's okay, because you can make amends, as quickly as possible. Part of empathy is, just saying, I'm sorry I was too tired, or I'm sorry I was in a horrible mood and it just came out. And I've, I hope that you can forgive my words that were not mindful, or whatever you want to say. But part of empathy is making amends if indeed you did make a mistake. And we all make mistakes. But empathy is about having it for yourself, having it for other people. And part of having it for yourself is learning self-care and learning how to say no. So empathy, when I'm talking to people around, when I'm traveling, empathy is not about endless giving. For me, my definition is not about it. That's impossible. If I was to give to everyone who wanted something, or had this question or that question, or wanted to share this experience, I would be, dead. I wouldn't be able to function. And so it's just too much for me, for my body, as an empath. I can't be endlessly available to people, but I can, if I take care of myself empathically, I can be there in extremely high quality way when I take care of myself, and I want to be able to give to people in that position when I'm feeling good. And you're not always feeling perfect, but if you're exhausted, you need to rest. And so that's one of the misconceptions that I've seen that people have, that they don't want to have empathy because they feel it's a weakness, which is interesting. They feel it's a weakness and other people will take advantage of them. Or they feel that it's impractical because they're just going to get exhausted. And so many people have said to me, well, what about the world? How in the world are you going to deal with, how can we deal with all this? It's way beyond, anything we ever experienced before, the stress and the tension, and our hearts go out to everyone. And I'm so exhausted from feeling their misery. All right. And so my response is that you don't want to feel everybody's misery. That's not how you approach empathy. So a basic empathy skill is learning how to set boundaries. You can have empathy, you can be the most loving person in the world, but you have to be able to say no when you're unable to give, or you're, when you practice empathic listening, which is also a chapter in the book, and how do you listen empathically? My suggestion is that you just focus on one issue at a time. I think it's a mistake to have empathic listening sessions that are open-ended, where people can just share endlessly, because they will. And, you don't want to be sitting there for 2 hours listening. It's too much, especially if you're an empath, and you're very sensitive, and, you're open to what other people are giving. You're listening with your body, you're listening with your, with every ounce of your being. You're not just, way back there, listening from your head. So for that reason, boundaries are very important in the development of empathy, and learning how to protect your energy is very important, so that you don't get drained by everything that's happening. You want to practice empathy towards yourself first and foremost. And I can't overemphasize how important that is, but that's often overlooked when we have discussions about empathy. So it's about treating yourself well, and then with other people in the world, to learn how to center yourself and to ask yourself, do I have this to give at the moment? And how much can I give? And if it's a little amount, let's say you just have a little to give, you can give the most high quality experience in the world. I could talk to somebody if I have, let's say, during my training, my psychiatric training, I had lots of patients, so they came in one after the other. So if I was able to center myself and give 100% for that 5 minutes, that's a lot. You can give a lot of quality energy in 5 minutes if you adjust your eyes. Empathy is about an attunement process where I adjust my eyes, how I look at somebody, my posture, not being distracted. And empathic listening, I make somebody my whole world, but I don't take on their energy because I don't see that as being helpful. If I did take on their energy, it doesn't help them. It doesn't help me. It just makes for another miserable person. And so you have to learn to feel good as you're developing empathy about setting boundaries with certain people, saying something like, I hear what you're saying, but it's not something that I have to give. I need to go home and rest right now, or whatever you need to do. And perhaps we could plan another time to talk about this. But you have to learn how to say no in a nice way. And it's a joy, really, to do that. As people ask so much of you all the time, and you have to learn to have empathy for yourself and take care of yourself, and have empathy for your deep innermost needs. Many times empaths focus their life around giving, and they give to everybody. And the giving is a central portion of their life. And it's important to balance that so you don't overgive or codependently give, that you are able to find a center in your giving so that the giving can be a selfless act of service with boundaries. So it's learning how to set boundaries and being there for people, and listening in a way that people aren't used to being listened to. As the chapter in the book, The High Art of Empathic Listening, we've lost the ability to listen in our culture. Everybody's going so fast all the time. You can't listen if you're going that fast. And in the book, I tell everybody that empathy is about slowing down. It's about slowing down, attuning. It's not rushing through something if you don't have to rush. You attune to something, and that attunement can be best found by going out in nature. If you want to practice with the plants or the trees or the rivers, you can attune to the natural world. And that's a way of empathically feeding yourself, by attuning to the world. You don't go out in nature and you're thinking about solving problems, hopefully. You're going into nature to be fed, and to resonate, as you can, as if you're empaths or you're empathic. You can resonate and feed yourself like that, and allow yourself to be filled up. And so empathy is about setting boundaries. It's about high quality giving. It's about sometimes teaching people what your needs are. If you're communicating about a conflict, let's say with your family, it's really useful, instead of just getting in arguments, which I don't suggest, is to say, I could hear you if you say it in this way. It's not helpful for me if you're yelling at me, because I cannot hear anything if you're yelling, and yelling is unacceptable. So you can say, let's come back together again when we're both more centered. So you have to have some rules of communication. You don't want blaming, you don't want shaming, you don't want yelling, raging, none of that. You have to be in a place of coming from your heart as much as possible. And if you're not able to get to that place in communication, then it's better to have the conversation at another point, as far as I'm concerned. And it's perfectly okay to plan a time to talk. I actually prefer that, because then, I'll make allowances for my energy level. And so you can practice all these techniques on how to listen, what feels comfortable for you, how to set boundaries with empathy, how to enjoy empathy. I mean, I love empathy because it's connection. And for me, I think the most important thing in life is to connect. I love connecting. It's very fulfilling for me to connect. And empathy allows you to connect with yourself, with other people, with animals, with nature. It allows you to connect in meditation. And meditation is a wonderful tool to center yourself and come back to your heart. If you've had a crazy day and you've lost yourself or you've lost your center, you could start over every time you close your eyes and sit, I suggest at a sacred space, and breathe and begin again. You could always begin again with empathy, and that's what's so beautiful about it. And so to be able to have practices, and hopefully, you'll enjoy a lot of the practices in the book, because these are the practices I use that I present in the book in terms of boundary setting and learning how to deal with difficult people, from the most centered, loving place you can be. And also how to be with people who have different values. This is very pertinent in our world. How do you have empathy for people with different values? Or how do you communicate empathically with people with different values, maybe values that you abhor? That's the extreme example. What do you do in those situations? What is the way to be with that person, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is polarizing and anger and violence, and you can't tolerate differences, and just we're not really that skilled as a in terms of humanity, in terms of how to deal with people of differing values. It's very hard for people. But my suggestion is just a quick suggestion before I tie up and go to the Q&A, and you can ask me questions about this there, is that if somebody is starting to spout their beliefs that you just don't like at all, and you're kind of stuck there, you can, if you have to go, I wouldn't listen endlessly to them, but I would say, thank you for sharing that. That was, that's illuminating. I'm going to give it some thought. And that's all you say. And the reason that you want to say that is that you want to give this person something. You want to give them a little empathy. And by saying that, you're saying, I hear you. And what they're not used to is somebody taking the trouble to hear them. I hear you. And you don't have to get into, but I don't agree with you, and get into a debate. I would not debate it. But I would say, I hear you. It's a surprising thing to say. I hear you, and have your eyes be good, so you're not scared or angry, and have your heart, be in the right place. You're just, you two seem like you're from a different planet, but doesn't matter. Just say, I hear you. And I'm going to give it some thought. And by doing that, you're changing the pattern of polarization and anger and violence. And it's on an energetic level. And you might think, I don't know what kind of good it will do, but it will do a lot of good. If people begin to shift this pattern of war, basically, of being warlike, and give somebody something who is obviously, struggling or caught in some kind of rigid mode of thinking that doesn't allow them to come into their heart. To me, that's a form of crippling when I see that, and I do feel sad for them, because they're not in their heart. And just to end, happy people don't create wars. They don't. And they don't create polarization and everything that's going on in the world. That's not happiness. That's misery or narcissism. People who are into just power and not love. But it's not happiness. And I hope you can remember that and have some empathy for that, though you don't have empathy for any kind of horrible actions or betrayals or hurts, or, and that's not what I'm saying, having empathy with, but have empathy for the fact they can't find their hearts, and they're so trying to find an identity that's rigid and fits into some linear way of perceiving life. And it's just, you have to decide, how to deal with that, because this is a big issue in our world now. And this simple suggestion that I gave you would be a way to start. But again, the people, as I'm traveling, people were saying to me, why would I want to do that? And that's the big question. Why would I want to ever have empathy for somebody who hurt me or hurt somebody I love, or is just a nasty person, or whatever your judgment is about the person? And I happen to think it's really important, because I think, in the book, I really, really emphasize the power of the individual, you know, to make change. And so don't ever think that you're not capable as one individual of making change. I think we're each in a very powerful place, and you do not want to disempower yourself now by thinking I'm just one person. You making an energetic change at home, alone, at your sacred space is huge. I mean, from my standpoint, energetic standpoint, huge. And so I hope you can value that, everyone listening. Don't think that your contribution to, you know, wanting to come from a better place isn't important. That's
1 minute.
really, thank you, really, really important. So, you know, don't think that you're just powerless and you can't do anything. That's the linear mind. But from the place of the heart, which is where empathy comes from, if you can go to your heart and not your mind will come up with all kinds of ideas about why you don't want to have empathy. All right. But your heart, if you go into your heart will know why you want to find it. And you want to find it because the heart is the path of the Tao, or the, you know, the one path. And that's the path that you can't go wrong on, not the heart. If you ask it for wise guidance. And so empathy comes from the heart. And I know this opens up a lot of different questions, but in any case, hope you enjoy the book. It's called The Genius of Empathy, and you can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any bookstore. And for those of you who want to reach me, I have a website, drjudithorloff.com, and I have a free empath support newsletter if you're interested in that. It's about once monthly. But okay, let's open up now to the Q&A, and I want to hear what your questions are about anything I said about empathy or whatever aspect of empathy you'd like to discuss.
Yes, there have been some wonderful questions posted in the chat. Would our volunteers like to pose one of those questions for Dr. Orloff? Ruth, go ahead.
So we have a question from Samuel, and he asks, can we give empathy without talking, just by being silent?
Oh, beautiful question. The answer is yes, definitely. More people were silent, it would be great. As you could, when you're silent, you can adjust your energy a certain way. And if you want to come from your heart as opposed to your head, it gives you, the silence gives you a chance to center yourself. But it also, you can give off tremendous heart energy in the silence. And I believe silence as a practice is important for empaths, and it's important for everyone to recoup themselves. And so if you sit in silence, let's say you're in a meeting at work, and there's a team meeting, and there's arguments, so it's not going so well. You want to sit there and just begin to send out heart energy from your heart so that it can fill the room. The heart energy fills the room, and it causes people to relax, you know, and feel better, because people are starving for this heart energy. So in the silence, if your eyes are right, you know, again, it's our human body is the instrument for empathy. We attune our eyes so that they're soft and caring, but not intrusive. Our tone of voice, with silence, we won't talk. But to have your body posture very relaxed, not going forward and not intrusive in any way. You want to just be natural with somebody. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking it.
Wonderful. Jonathan?
Yes. Randy is asking the question, how do you offer empathy to your family when they're blanket refusing to support you while they are demanding that you support them?
So there's an argument going on? Is that what's happening?
How do you support your family if they are not supporting you?
oh, well, you don't exactly support them, but you look at them and you say, what's going on with them? You know, why they're not supporting you? Are they angry at you? Are they narcissist? Do they have empathy deficient disorder? What's going on? You just got to figure out what's going on with them. And you have empathy for their wounded parts. You have empathy for, I don't know why they wouldn't be supporting you, you know, but that happens a lot in families. There's some kind of disagreement going on that you do not want to make worse. You want to move away from that. Whatever energy they have is not something that's helpful at this point, but you have the power to hold a more neutral space with them and not to get into it with them. Sometimes an appropriate empathic response is just not getting into any kind of argument, disagreement, nothing. You don't want to get into it with them. You want to take a step back from these people right now. I mean, sometimes wisdom is taking a step back and having empathy for their shortcomings, but practicing self-care. And if you find you're obsessing about your family, you may want to get help with, you know, an empathy therapist or a coach or something that can help you to make some sense out of this. Because this issue with family is so important, and it's not good to be continually hurt by your family over and over again. And it's the same pattern. So your empathy is just simple. Have empathy for, you know, their shortcomings, and for yourself and having to deal with this. This is not an easy situation. And then go off and create a life that involves more than your family right now, because you're not going to get what you need from your family. And that's part of self-care and empathy, is just realizing it's just heartbreaking. I can't get what I need from these people because I need it and I love them, but you can't, not right now. And so wisdom is learning how to take a few steps back when it's not possible to change something, but in your heart, you can have empathy, you know, for their, I don't know, their rigidity, their shortcomings, their anger, their lack of understanding for you. And then go about looking a different direction right now. Give it some breathing room. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orloff. That was wonderful. Kara?
Vicky asks, can you address how to deal with taking on someone's pain in a massage when your hands?
Oh, yes. Are you a massage therapist?
I believe Vicky is. I was, so I'm very interested in the same question.
Oh, yeah. Well, before you work on anybody, you know, you have to center yourself and keep your energy distinct from theirs. You know, you have to center yourself and not over-identify with what they're going through. Or if you start feeling a pain or an ache, or they start crying, you have to breathe and breathe it out. And you have to say to yourself, I will observe this, not absorb it. This is not mine. It's not any of my business to take it on. If you're an empath, which I think you are, you will sort of naturally want to take on everything. But part of the discipline of empathy and learning how to be an empowered empath is not taking it on. And if you can't help but take it on, you have to look at the issues that you're enmeshed with, because usually you don't take on issues that you don't also have a resonance with inside yourself in terms of your own healing. But you're a wonderful massage therapist. I can feel the kind of work that you do. And it's overkill to want to take on anything they're going through. And I wouldn't talk to them too long about what they're going through. I don't know if you talk as part of a session. One thing I love in getting body work is not talking at all. You know, I'm just so happy not to talk, you know, and just be worked on, you know, and, but it's part of, as a healthcare provider, it's just part of the job description to learn how not to take on other people's stuff. So you examine, and please, you know, you could read the chapter on that. But it's a skill that we all must learn. But if sometimes energy does come in, breathe, center, put your hand on your heart, say to yourself, this is not mine, and God bless her, and may she heal, may he heal in the best possible circumstances. But you know, for you to work on yourself, and a lot of times it comes down to parental upbringing. You know, what did you do? What were your patterns with your parents? You know, were you the one who took on everything? Were you the peacekeeper? Who were you? And it means a little bit of detachment from the early patterns too. So it's not a complex issue, but it has different layers to it that are well worth exploring. And I commend you for asking the question, because it will be life-saving with your career. Because I've seen I had so many friends who were body workers, and worked with people who just stopped doing it because it became so overwhelming for them. They've never learned how to keep that detachment. But if you can learn it, and it's really empowering, and then you can be with people, they're going through all sorts of things, and you're pretty much fine. You're in your own center. You're not over enmeshed or codependent or identifying with them or wanting to fix them, as you can't fix them, but you can send them energy. You can send them energy, but it's not a fixing energy. It's more, you send them during the massage, the heart, the empathy, whatever you're going through, X, Y, or Z, whatever you're going through, I'm sending the heart energy, and it moves through your body. You don't have to direct it. It moves through your body and goes out your hands, and it will help people more than anything you could do. If you send this beautiful heart energy in a massage, that energy is the healing energy. And so you want to send, you don't want to absorb, you want to send, and it will also feed you. This is a big question I talk about with people in healthcare. And it's a very worthwhile question to consider.
That was a wonderful answer. Thank you. Marvelous. Ruth?
Thank you, Judith. We have a question. Thank you. We have a question from Lucy. So Lucy's asking, how do I understand people who are so hurt inside that they keep hurting other people?
Yes.
Is it because they are in recoil from events that traumatize them and they don't comprehend the effects of their actions on others? Thank you.
Yes, that's one reason. But sometimes if somebody's a narcissist, a sociopath, or a psychopath, what they are is they have empathy deficient disorder, so they don't feel empathy as we know it. And so what they're into is power. And sometimes if people are sadistic, they get off on the power. And that's, you want to avoid these people, obviously, but I'm just telling you the motivation, the psychological motivation, their motivation is power, not love. And so you want to identify these people. Let's go to the chapter on the empathy deficient disorder people. And the saying, hurt people. It's a great sadness, that people do that, but they do. And you want to protect yourself from these people. You don't want to have them in your life if you can control it. But what you have empathy for is the tremendous, the crippling of the heart that happens when happy people don't hurt people. They don't go around hurting people, or they don't. Happy people want you to be in your power. And they want you to find love. They don't want to take that away from you. And the narcissist types want to take your power away from you. And they want power over you rather than you having your own power. And so, that's what you have. You have empathy for their wounds. And you want to surround yourself with a circle of people who are loving. The type of person that you're talking about is very real. And there are a lot of them out there. but however you can limit contact or have no contact with these people, if you identify them, the better off you'll be. And that may be a loss for you, I don't know, but this is the boundary setting needs to be clear, with that. I was asked a question on the book tour, what do you do if somebody is abusive to you, or if somebody isn't treating you with respect? And my reaction was, I just leave. No, I don't stay there. Why should I stay there? I don't care. I don't care if I'm rude. I don't care. I'm just like, this isn't working for me. Bye. You have to treat me with respect. I don't have any, I don't give any leeway to that, at all in my life. And that was just an instinctive response. I don't give them any play. They can't do that. That's not acceptable. So anyways, I hope that was helpful for you.
Yeah, that was incredible. Thank you so much. We're actually going to extend the Q&A, and we're going to go for another 9 minutes, Jana. Okay. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, thank you. I have a question from DJ Chandler. How do we balance being an empath or giving empathy and being an activist?
That's a great question. You have to have a separate practice to take care of yourself, TJ. You can't you get over involved. You're so enthusiastic, and you want to do so much good. And I understand that, but you have to balance it with doing good for yourself and taking time out from being an activist. I once did a weekend for activists up in Maine to replenish themselves because they were so burnt out. From giving all the time and survivor's guilt. They came from horrible backgrounds, and they went into the dark spots of the earth to help. And you have to have that self-care going so that you can have a DJ that's separate from being an activist. That's not your only identity. I know it's an identity you like, but you have to have the part that doesn't do that, and the part that goes and walks by the stream and thinks about yourself. It's part of activism is self-empathy, because the more self-empathy you have, the more you can model it for others. And being a model is so important, in the empathy movement. Being a model for empathy, people watch you. I mean, they watch how I am with people. I'm aware of that. And like when I give workshops or I give talks, people are watching me, and I love that because I'm very conscious of that, and I can be a certain way for them. So being is very important, but how you are with yourself alone affects that way you are with people, because then you have something to bring to them that's real. The practice of empathy with one's own self, and then you can go out and change the world. So I hope that helped, TJ.
It did. Thank you so much, Dr. Orloff. Ruth?
Hello, Judith. We have a question from Laurie.
Hi, Laurie.
Laurie asks, I often feel like I have to over-explain my need for time alone to help cope with my job as a hospice grief counselor. Any suggestions? Thank you.
Is it over-explaining to the other people in hospice, or who are you talking to?
So she often feels like she has to over-explain her need for time alone so that she can cope with her job as a hospice grief counselor.
Yeah, I don't understand who she's over-explaining to, but I don't believe in over-explaining anything. You have to get used to speaking in sound bites that are high energy from the heart, sound bites, and telling people, I need to be alone to replenish myself so I can do my work well, and keep it like that. Don't over-explain. You lose your power when you over-explain. It's just, have you been around people who over-explain things? It's exhausting. and there's no need for it. If you're in your power, you don't have to beg or complain or get people to understand. And you can say things in a short way. I need to do this for my health so I could be there for my patients. This is absolutely crucial for my well-being. And you can say it in a few words without over-explaining. It takes practice with a friend. I do this with my patients sometimes, where I have them practice with me saying a certain script, and then going and dealing with the people who need to be spoken to. But don't over-explaining is a pattern that goes beyond your hospice work. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you, Dr. Orloff. We have about 4 more minutes of the Q&A. Go ahead, Kara.
I have a question from Johnny. He is asking for signs of and remedies for compassion fatigue.
Oh, compassion fatigue. I'm very familiar with it. I think all empaths, I think we all are, what it feels like. It just, I'm very in touch with my body because I can't help but be. I just always have been very in touch with my body. So I feel things the very moment any kind of shift is happening. And it feels like my energy is getting sapped out of me. And my solar plexus starts aching, and I just want to go and be quiet. And voices are too loud, and noises start getting too loud, noises of the world. I just start feeling like I need my alone time. So and tiredness, that's a signal for me, a big signal, because I do not want to indulge tiredness in myself. I need to rest. If I don't rest, I get into trouble. And I can feel intuitively there's a red line. When I go over it and I give way too much, I'm going to suffer. Something's going to happen, whether it's, an illness or feeling depressed or whatever. I'm going to feel, my body is going to feel off. And so I suggest that everyone listens to their body to prevent the compassion fatigue. Begin to feel when your energy starts to crash, or go down. Begin to understand and see when you're really not listening to people anymore. When you're not able to focus and listen. So look for the early signs, because if you don't, then when compassion fatigue hits, sometimes it can take a really long time to get over and to heal, because you need a lot of rest, you need a lot of self-care, and you don't want to get to the point where you just don't want to give to anyone anymore. And I know that healers do get to that point. I mean, I've seen them over the years where they just, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going and doing something else. This is too much for me. That's how they feel, because they let it go too far. And we don't want to lose you. We need you. So you want to catch it earlier, or to have friends that you could talk to and be honest with and say, hey, I can't listen to another person again ever in my life, when you're at that point. And that's fine. You need to be honest with these feelings, but you need to take care of yourself then, and you will come back to yourself. All right. You have to learn how to bring everything back to center and have empathy, practice self-empathy, and be quiet as much as you can, as the quietness will feed you and it will help heal the compassion fatigue. And then who knows, the next morning, you might wake up bright and ready to start again, or you might need a day or two, but be aware of this. This is what we have a lot of losses of great empathic people because they can't take the compassion fatigue.
You have Thank 1 minute. You.
One more minute.
Maybe we can wrap up. Yes, we only have 1 more minute, but we're going to go ahead and close the Q&A for now. Dr. Orloff, it was really incredible to have you here. This is very memorable. The entire summit will be available as a recording in several different places, and Dr. Judith Orloff speaking and the Q&A will also be available on the Empath Shift, the YouTube channel. Now we're going to go to our next speaker, Michelle J. Howe. Michelle J. Howe is the founder of the Empath Evolution and an educator who empowers teams and leaders to value sensitivity, intuition, and empathy. And if you look in the chat, Ruth will be posting a free gift that Michelle J. Howe has for you. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. I loved listening to Judith. I love how each of us comes at this topic and adds to my knowledge base. I'm like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Oh, just so I've got 10 minutes. So I want to just share as much as I can with you. You're here because you must identify as an empath. Otherwise, I don't know that you would be here, but giving you how I see empathy, empathy, a little bit different, but not really. It's the ability to feel and the ability to value feeling. And not that on purpose we've ever not valued feelings, but I think as a society, our mind starts to take over and we think that we've got everything put together from our mind, and society as a whole values the thought, values the direction of the thought more than what the body is telling you, what your feelings are towards something or someone. So I did not know I didn't know there was a word as empath. I didn't know there was a word as sensitivity, but I always functioned as an empath. And it wasn't until I saw the 30 traits, till I actually hit a wall. I call them little awakening experiences, and it's different for each of us, what brings us to look for deeper answers. I knew at one point, I'm like, there's some book that I have not read that can explain to me what I'm feeling right now and why this is happening to me. So I discovered the 30 traits, and yes, I'm an empath. And the top trait is people tell you their stories. Strangers tell you their stories. No one would ever think that I was sensitive or I was emotional, because I didn't drive with that. I didn't lead with that. I knew that I would be judged. I would be deemed not as strong if I led with that sensitivity. I always felt the undercurrent and the truths around me, but I didn't know that some people didn't feel that. I didn't know what that was. I just knew things. I knew when my grandmother was dying. How did I know that? I just knew it, right? So it's somewhat of an intuitive hit, right? So managing being an empath, when I started to really learn about it, my aura, my beingness is all about feeling. I love things that uplift me. So when I'm surrounded with things that are heavier or with people that are judging, that's kind of not so healthy for me. And I see it, but then I've always been curious, who is this person? Why is this person feeling and acting and behaving the way they do? And usually, oh, they're wounded. Oh, that's just an act. That's not really who they are. So the journey of an empath, I see it as a journey to self. You have to start looking inside versus looking outside, understanding who you are and what you feel versus what other people are feeling. And then not so much giving, but being from that perspective. You're being from that. That means you're not afraid to look at what's stuffed away inside of you that wasn't so great. So a lot of times the people that I work with, the empaths, they have a closet full of things, and something, whatever it might be, comes up and the closet busts open. And whether it's a physical illness or a loss or a transition of sorts, all of it comes collapsing down on them. And they were all situations and things that they have stuffed away because they didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't acceptable to even speak it, right? So a lot of what I see as part of our journey to self-healing is about speaking and listening and understanding what vibration and who we are, how to use that sensing skill that we have, and trusting that. So it is a process to get there. It doesn't just happen overnight, but you do it. I loved Judith with the quiet. Quiet is beautiful, right? But now sometimes in the quiet, we really get to see where we're off, or something is upsetting us, or we don't know what to do with quiet. Because in today's world, every one of us, probably in some way or another, we find things to distract us, that give us pleasure. We find ways to numb. We find our little techniques in life to get through, right? None of us had, I should say, any awareness of subtle energy. Our parents didn't know. How does society deal with emotions? They don't, for the most part. How do they deal with, patterns of behavior that have run through their family? They continue them until their eyes are open, or until something triggers it enough that it's too painful to continue this pattern. Oh, that's right. That's a pattern. And once you can see that something isn't working for you, like it's an opening for some new concepts, new ideas to shift the way you operate in the world, the way you operate within yourself. And like Judith said, that empathy for yourself, like we all want to be loved. That is the top thing. But what I find is that love starts within, and it's not about giving love. It's about you give and you receive, but you have to hold it. You have to be in touch with what that is. If you haven't been given a good example of what that is, you don't even know, you might think, well, I grew up like this. I was really smart. I was really this. I was really that, but I wasn't this. Like I got attention and I got love, quote unquote, in my mind from doing what others, my parents, my mother, my family thought was awesome, right? So oh yeah, I can do that. Oop, I can do that. Oops, I can do that. I'm great. Oh, but you don't get it on this end, Michelle. Like, so it was that kind of an upbringing. And in that instance, my love was coming from the outside. What do other people think of me? Am I fitting in? Am I pleasing them? That was a behavior that I have addressed, and I probably continue to address, because we all have, I don't know, personas or roles that we play in our families. We all want to be loved, but the love starts within us. And the other part about being an empath that I thought was fascinating, and I always did this, was I was always observing everybody. What makes them tick? What's that about? Where's this? Like I have a dialogue in my head, and my purpose was to gain wisdom and understanding. And certain people, like Judith, is like, they have an empathy deficit. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, some people are very fascinating because they don't even want to care or be loved. They don't care, or they say they don't care, right? It just depends. There's so many different ways we can show up in the world. And like that wholeness part is what an empath needs and wants and loves. Fullness, what we all want, right? So we're going to come into contact with people that are not necessarily as aware or as intuitive, and they're in pain, and they're dealing with pain, and they react to it. So it's almost being a study, enough of a study, embodying enough wisdom that you know what you're looking at around you and what's real, what's not real, and when to step into something, when to not step into that. Because when you look at everybody as they don't need you, it's not about you giving to them per se, right? It's about you seeing them as a powerful being that's having an experience and treating them with that respect or acknowledgement without needing to fix them per se, because that they're probably exactly where they need to be and this is who they are. It's just not always helpful. So
1 minute.
yeah, in total, I think we're out of balance as a society. The more we can come into balance with who we are ourselves, the more we can hold that space for other people to do likewise. And that means the good and the bad and the ugly, whatever those emotions are, need to be seen, acknowledged, and released. And that doesn't happen just like that. It's a process of you coming closer to what it is and releasing things. and coming to the center. So I hope you gain some knowledge from this. And yeah, any questions, let me know. I'm sure they put my contact info in the chat, but it was a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
You're welcome.
That was wonderful. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Michael R. Smith. He is a spiritual guide, medium, and author whose pioneering work to connect empaths with their divine potential has helped many worldwide over the last 20 years. You can look in the chat and Ruth will post where you can sign up for Dr. Smith's weekly inspirational messages from Spirit. And take it away, Dr. Michael.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you, all of you, for being here. What a intentional summit this is. And Genius of Empathy, talk about a genius title for the times that we're in. We really are, as empaths, we've been given the gift of genius. And let me share with you why. We're geniuses at, Dr. Orloff used the word, and got really excited about the word connection. And that's my absolute favorite word. I named my organization Empath Connection after that word. We are geniuses, empaths, those with high degrees of empathy, whether you resonate with the term empath or not. This ability that we have to, as Judith said, be in another person's shoes. Literally, we are the model of the future of humanity. All of us right here, just look around. We are moving into a completely new era of consciousness and oneness. And who knows oneness, not with any egoic, I'm not saying this from ego, but who knows oneness better than us, empaths, right? We get it. We know, we literally know in our bodies, in our cells, in our consciousness, in our mental body, we understand what somebody else is going through because we are going through it with them. With is the key word. And why is this such an amazing advantage for us, moving into this era of consciousness? Because we're showing people the way. We're way showers. We're trailblazers in the biggest possible way. We're showing people the potential of not only to connect and help another person know that they are understood. That alone is gold, right? That alone is so healing, is it not? Just feeling validated and feeling understood. And that's what we do for each other. So that's amazing. And then when you add on to it the fact that we've been gifted with a divine technology, which is the focus of my work and what I do specifically with empaths, is I help us to connect with our divine parents. I like to think of it as a relationship. Some of us may not have had the best parents, so maybe you want to use a different term. But these are our family in the best possible sense of the word. So what we're doing is we are activating through our presence, our energy field. The way that we've been designed as empaths is to pull in everything around us. Why? So that we can up-level it into something better. We can make somebody feel understood. But our aura itself, that was such a fabulous question. I believe it was Samuel said, can we show empathy in silence? Yes, we've been designed to do that, specifically by the universe, I would suggest, by spirit, to be able to activate, initiate, amplify the light, not the wounding. That's what we're moving out of. We're moving out of, as empaths, belief that we're burdened, we're martyrs, we're challenged by other people's energy. We are taking that language and we are moving over and going on offense now. I'm a sports guy, so sometimes break into offense and defense. Pardon that if you're not a sports person, but that's really what we're doing, is we're going on offense and we're saying, look, there are two choices that we have, two ways that we can live life being given this experience and signing up for it before we were born. We can look at it as a burden, or we can look at it as a gift. What do we want? Is it not a gift? And so collaborative relationships with the divine. What does that mean for you when I say that? Like, what is sparked in you when I say that this is, from here on out, the rest of your life and the rest of my life and the rest of our lives together, moving into oneness, is about piercing the veil of separation, that we're doing this alone. Now, Judith, you use this word alone time. Understood. I would add that what you might be describing, or others might describe as alone time or quiet time, is actually time with our spirit self. And how would that change your reality to know that there is not a moment in the day that we are not being communicated with, being given energy, so that we can complete our task of not being overwhelmed, serving humanity, and enjoying life and being happy in the process? How would that change your experience to know that that's what we're moving into? Is being an empath challenging? Ask yourself that question. Is being an empath challenging? I don't think there's any of us that would deny that there are moments of challenge. What is going to make our time on earth, from now until the time that you and I take our last breath, what is going to make it easier for us, smoother, more flowy? It is time spent with our divine self, and labeling it as such, labeling it as, I am choosing to spend my quiet time with my spirit self so that I can receive the energy and get juiced up again, so that I'm not feeling drained or tired or exhausted or overwhelmed. We have permission to recognize that we are not alone, ever. That word is an illusion, I would suggest. So, what if we together, working together as models of oneness, could take that knowledge that we are never alone, that we are been gifted with divine technology to both give and receive in equal measure, and we could take that out and share it, who we really are, with others. I can't tell you the number of, I do a class called the Empath Academy. I run a bunch of, I love running groups, and the power of the group is everything, just speaking personally. And so what if we could share our experience and know that we have permission to do so truthfully, without any attachment to how other people are going to receive us? Or are they going to think I'm a weirdo?
One
right?
minute.
Okay, I got 1 minute. Fabulous. Thank you, Divine, for helping all of us to transcend time. That's one of my favorite prayers, and thank you for that. So yeah, we have permission. What if we have, you and I, and we had permission to share what we're doing here today? Everything that we have talked about today, and take it out into the mainstream, into the public. That is what so many of us have been doing for our careers. And now it's up to us, whether it's your career or not. Can you be bold? This is what the divine is asking each one of us. Will you surrender the idea that you will be judged negatively, or that you will experience wounding by sharing the truth of who you are? Will you surrender that to me? This is what the divine is saying. And hopefully the answer to that question will be in the affirmative. And when you and I and we do that together, all kinds of good stuff happens. More money, better relationships, more health. We release the floodgates and we open up this whole huge spigot to good experiences, not challenging. Thank you, everybody. I really have enjoyed this event. Thank you for your presence.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michael R. Smith. Now we're going to introduce our next speaker. Tom, Two Men Fighting in One DiNardo, is a renunciate, mystic, and healer. He follows the red road, and he is a sacred Heyoka, which is an empath and a contrarian. Thank you, Tom. It's all yours.
Thanks for having me, DJ and Edwin. I appreciate the opportunity being here. I'm very honored. Thank you. My name's Tom, everyone. Fairly new to this speaking here, so I'm going to give myself a little brief introduction for those of you who are not familiar with me or the work that I do. So where empaths are concerned, we're all empaths, and I believe that we either come into this at a very young age, our understanding, or we come to realize who and what we are later in life. For me, my experience began as a child. 3 years old, I had my first God experience. I have seen angels, aliens, and witnessed miracles. It's not been a charmed life on the Heyoka path. It's a matter of fact, been excruciatingly painful with many trials, tribulations, some serious accidents that truthfully I should not have survived. I thank God for the angels and very grateful for all the life lessons that I've experienced, because part of my understanding being an empath is we can know someone's pain intellectually, but when you really feel the person's experience, emotional, physical, etc., that is the epitome of empathy. And living those life experiences brings the understanding from the intellectual truly to the spiritual. By my mid-20s, I had 2 near-death experiences. Shortly after that, I became a faith healer, channel and a vessel for healing for Creator. I was poor as dirt, but rich in spirit. 1994, I traveled to Fort Berthold, North Dakota to explore my Native American heritage. There, I was struck by lightning and experienced what they call the Heyoka calling. Shortly after that, I was named Madze Miki Murunubish, 2 men fighting in one. And then, of course, I returned to California, and like so many of us, we try to be in the world, but not of the world, and I got lost in materialism, self-aggrandizement for 25 years. I was still maintaining some spiritual awareness, but really, truly getting lost in the world of illusion or Maya. I experienced, after the 25 years, a few years ago, I lost everything and I became awake. The angel said, "We never walked away from you, but you chose to walk away from us." I embraced the process of surrender, received great healing from Creator, and I now live a life in service to all. And every day I express gratitude for the life that I have and what I'm able to do in helping others. The Heyoka path is a life of being an empath and a contrarian. Heyoka is Lakota Sioux word. The Heyoka are often called sacred clowns, weather doctors, medicine men, holy men, or medicine people. The Heyoka, like the Fool card in the Tarot deck, each day walks off the cliff. 2 proverbial questions that remain when you picture the Fool card is, does my unwavering faith in Creator break my fall, or do I plummet to my imminent demise? The Heyoka is a spiritual calling in which Wakinyan, or the thunder beings, literally touch you with lightning. You're blessed as you go forward on your path after being struck by lightning. You become in service to the Creator and humanity, and it's not an easy life. It's definitely a life of trying and being in service to everyone. So often you need to recharge. Heoka carries powerful medicine. There are spiritual healers, contrarians, and true empaths. The Heoka empath, as contrarians, do not live in opposition to the world. The Heoka lives contrarily to the norms, expectations, approaches, and reactions normally anticipated by people in Western society. Heoka is not antisocial, but more of a nonconformist. They're always found exactly where they are needed and critically available to those most in need. As empaths, the Heoka understand the feelings of people around them. They deliver powerful healing in ways that you would not expect. Their messages are delivered at the right time, the right place. Whether or not they're received, that's a different story if they're not received well by people, but the message is always appropriate and channeled from Creator. This brings me to a point where, as empaths, we come to the understanding of what our relationship is in the world. So I've been an amateur mycologist for a couple of decades, and mushrooms changed my world. There's something indeed mystical and magical in the study of mushrooms. I learned about mycelium, and after learning about mycelium, my world changed forever. Mycelium is a neural network found in the forest of the world. Mycelium mushrooms coexist in a symbiotic relationship with forests, both giving and taking in a healthy, balanced relationship. Now, when we think of humans in relation to our world, we have this wonderful aspect of our physiology. The fascia within our bodies is a sheath surrounding the muscles within our bodies. Some scientists have recently discovered that the fascia is the repository of muscle memory. Now, with fascia, that is also our neural spiritual network. Metaphysicians like myself staunchly believe that the body's fascia stores more than just muscle memory. It stores memories that are far older than the current lifetime patterns that we exist in. Our fascia is our neural network that not only empathetically connects us with each other, but also with Mother Earth. I know that our bodies are, and our fascia is our neural spiritual network, which also accesses the Akashic records, higher level beings, and our Creator. Fascia is the neural network that immerses us into what I fondly refer to as the human mycelium. Our spiritual empathic awakenings and the upcoming activations that we can expect in this lifetime, at this point, may be beyond our comprehension, or maybe some of us are becoming aware of this right now. We live in amazing times, the dawning of the age of Aquarius, the end of the Kali Yuga, or the period of the dark times is all ending. And it's the beginning of the Satya Yuga, or the restoration of our spiritual virtues. We're also living in a time that the Hopi people call the prophecy for America, what the Anishinaabe or Ojibwe people call the Seven Fires prophecy. We've recently left the Seven Fires prophecy, and we're now entering into the eighth fire. It is imperative that we make radical paradigm shift in our consciousness and give up the selfish, self-focused past pursuits that we've all engaged in. We must embrace our dharma, our spiritual work, empaths in service to all. Quite soon, all of us will be undergoing tremendous changes. For some, it is already happening. Both energies, positive and negative, are increasing exponentially. We will witness events on this planet of tremendous good and some that aren't so good. But we as empaths will bring good into this world. Understanding the second coming as a metaphor is...
1 minute.
Understanding the second coming as a metaphor is an empathic awakening of the Christ conscious within all of us. And Jesus, as he said in his message, is, "You will do the works that I do, and greater than these will you do." I believe this time is coming as we embrace this consciousness. My visions for 2024 are that the holy people of this world, having nothing to do with religion whatsoever, will be receiving a spiritual blessing and an activation before the end of June. In conclusion, I just want to say to all of you, thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to present with these wonderful luminaries. I welcome all of you to connect with me on LinkedIn. For those wishing to connect on LinkedIn, I will give a free 1 hour coaching session on Zoom to the first 11 people connecting on LinkedIn. Thank you. Aho, miigwech. Gratitude.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom. Two men fighting as one. Our next speaker is Dr. Cynthia Higgins. Dr. Higgins is an empath, physician, spiritual life coach, and online course creator of Cracking the Dharma Code, an online course for those seeking to share and deepen their spiritual experiences as empaths. Her website is workforangelsllc.com. Thank you very much, Dr. Higgins. Take it away.
Okay, and just a little correction there. It's Work of Angels, LLC. Yeah, if you put in work for, might take you to a different place. So it's Work of Angels, LLC.
I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. But, thank you, everyone, because it's such a pleasure being here. I just, to share this time and this energy with all of you. It just, one of the most loving places to be on the planet right now. So yeah, this is very fun and very exciting. But I'm a psychiatrist, but I have a particularly interesting niche. I practice a form of medicine called energy psychology, and I have a particular emphasis on angelic intervention. And this is because, angels have been a part of my life for a very, very long time. And, as a child, they were this point of fascination. I mean, as excited as I was about, everything associated with Christmas time, my interest was always, what's going on with that little being on top of the tree, and my family always thought that this was a little bit odd, but as I grew older, what happened for me is that they became the very gentle agents of my own reawakening. And in as much as, we're all born into this world with a degree of empathy, with that intuition. Well, I had it too, had these amazing experiences, but like many other people, as I grew older, did my best to kind of push that away. And that was because, as a young teen, none of my friends were talking about the things that they could feel that other people were experiencing. No one was talking about the things that they could see that no one else could see. And so, I had put all of that aside, or at least I thought I did. And I thought that I was appealing to the logical side of my brain. So I started pursuing a career first in molecular biology and then some graduate studies in biochemistry and then going on to study medicine. But there came a time when it appeared that my life was falling apart. And it literally was the angelic realm that was there to really pull back that veil and to help me recognize that what was happening was a transition away from all of the things that were no longer in alignment with my own energy, my values, and my purpose. And, and this was something of a wake-up call for me because I really didn't have an awareness of the exquisite sensitivity of my own energetic field and its response to the energy of other people. And so at one point, the cost of this lack of awareness physically, had been two different doctors thinking that I had two different types of cancer. And it was all stress. Yeah. So it was about this time that I stumbled into a metaphysical shop where I was living at the time, which was in Sedona, Arizona. And I was just drawn to one of the providers there. And she's someone who happened to work with angels. And the rest of the story is probably a lot longer than we've got time for today. But true to the law of attraction about, what we manifest as, being not just what we desire, but where we ourselves vibrate. Moving forward all of these years, this has now been almost like 20 years. The vast majority of my clients are empaths. And although, they all hail from different cultures, each has embraced a broader worldview by opening themselves to literally that majesty of the gifts that they embody. And the significance that I bring today regarding the angelic realm is their importance as that ever-present resource, as Dr. Smith, said, that ever-important resource to remind us as empaths that, we often have to turn that lens of love and compassion towards ourselves, and to be ever aware that there is huge power and purpose in being so wonderfully and lovingly made. Because there are times when we forget this. And, I truly believe that, someone had asked the question in the chart, each of us is a healer in our own right. And it doesn't matter what we call ourselves. It doesn't matter what we do during the day, because in effect, it's our very presence that accomplishes this healing. I refer to empaths as transformational catalyst because it does have everything to do with the power of our bioenergetic field, particularly that heart energy. And if you do some of the research, you'll see maybe some discrepancies in the measurements, but when we talk about the bioenergetic field that the heart creates compared to the brain, that ranges anywhere from 100 times stronger to 5,000 times stronger. So imagine what takes place when people come into the bioenergetic field, the aura of an empath. All sorts of miracles happen. And one of the things that we must detach from is that person's response. We are the messengers, like angels. We are the messengers of love and transformation. How that message is received is not within our purview to control or to attempt to direct. And I say that because each person comes to their own awakening in their own divine timing. And there is a really important principle by which I feel it helps to abide by, and that is to meet each person where they are. Like Dr. Orloff mentioned, there are some people that are in a very painful place. And by meeting them where they are, we honor that this is the place from which they are coming, the operating system, if you will, by which they are attempting to make sense of their world. We can have compassion for it, we can observe it, but we do not have to take it on as our energy or our project. And so those connections with our angelic helpers, our own coaches and our coaches and cheerleaders, they're the ones who remind us, that when we get to that line that Dr. Orloff mentioned, this is when we pull back, we replenish, and we open ourselves up to that support and that love that enables us to go back out into the world and do what we do best, which is transform. We transform hearts. Thank you. We transform hearts, we transform minds, we transform energies, singularly and collectively. And this is the gift, one of the gifts rather, of empathy that I hope that you all will remember about yourselves, that you will embrace wholeheartedly with joy and with pride. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being who you are. this incredible blessing to the world.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Cynthia Higgins. Please be sure to visit her website and take advantage of her freebie. And now we are going to transition into the Empathy Circle segment. I want to thank our speakers for coming and being a part of this incredible summit. I love you all. You're so wonderful. This is one of the best experiences I've ever had. Thank you, and take it away, Edwin.
Okay, thanks, DJ, and thank you to all of our speakers. As DJ mentioned, we're transitioning into the Empathy Circle section of this summit, and it should be posted in the chat that if you have done an Empathy Circle, the training, so you're familiar with how to facilitate an Empathy Circle, you can add ECF, like I have on my name here, that just shows that you're an Empathy Circle facilitator, because we're going to be, DJ is going to be creating these breakout rooms. She's going to put one facilitator in each room, and then we'll be going into those breakout rooms. You can actually experience the Empathy Circle. And also, if there'll be one circle would be recorded, and that's the one that I'm in. And so if you do not want to be in that room, say NF, no, NR, no record after your name, and then GJ will be sure not to put you into that room. So this is just so wonderful, this summit to hear about empathy and empaths. And maybe I'll just say a little bit about myself. I'm currently the director for the past 15 years of the Empathy Center. And so for 15 years, I've been working quite intensely on how do we create a more empathic society. As I grew up, I was a seeker, and after high school, I took off and traveled all over the world for 10 years, sort of seeking the sense of meaning to life. And what I really found, it's how we connect with people that is really important, what our values are, and how we are able to connect at a human level to see our common humanity. And I worked in the computer field for some time after I was done traveling. But I always wanted to keep doing that seeking, with understanding human values. So I started creating some documentaries about human values, and I came across the value of empathy. And I realized, well, this is really what I learned in all those years of seeking, is how we connect more deeply with each other and see each other's common humanity. And so 15 years ago, I started working on this topic of empathy, created a lot of resources, the largest website on the internet for empathy-related material, curriculum, all kinds of different projects, even ran for Congress as the empathy candidate here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then about a year and a half ago, my brother purchased this property in Santa Barbara, California, which you can see in the backdrop, and he asked me to manage it. And so we're setting up a physical empathy center in Santa Barbara, California, and it's on 35 acres of land and 55,000 square feet of building space. And we are holding workshops and all kinds of different. It's an empathic retreat center, basically. And so anyway, in those 15 years of working on the topic of empathy, I've come across the term empath, over and over again. And I think I'm sort of wanting to reclaim that word empath, because I think that we're all born empathic, primarily, 99.9%, and that we have that basic empathy like a muscle that can be strengthened and exercised. And a lot of times with empaths, there's sort of a negative connotation given to empaths. So I'm going to go over some that I have found of how empaths are described. It's like empaths are overly sensitive to other feelings. So you're overly sensitive, right? So it's a problem that you feel deeply, but somehow it's a problem. That you're a sponge, that you take on other people's feelings, and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do with these feelings. Or you get lost in other people's feelings, like, oh, where am I? Where's my sense of self? And also when you take on those feelings that you react strongly, like, oh, I get really angry or I get depressed or have these strong reactions, and also maybe have a sense of losing one's boundaries of, where am I and where is the other person? And all this leads to feeling tired, exhausted. There was a mention of compassion or empathy fatigue, that, oh, this is going to lead to these problems, where actually I don't think that there is such a thing as empathy fatigue. It's actually an empathy deficit. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So from my experience with working on empathy, I found that the most effective first step gateway practice is a real tangible tangible process is active listening. And this was developed by Carl Rogers, who's one of the top most influential clinical psychologists in history. And he developed this active listening process. And what I found is if we do this active listening process together with each other, that it really addresses and it models that empathic way of being and being an empath, a true empath. And so we're going to be actually doing that practice in a little bit. And I'm going to explain how that process works. So an empathy circle is usually, 4 to 7 participants. We're going to have maybe 6 or so today in a circle. And there's different roles that people take in the circle. That there's one person is going to be the speaker, and then the other person is an active listener who's going to be listening to the speaker, and then the other participants are silent listeners. And then there's usually a facilitator as well that sort of holds the space and just knows how to keep everyone in the process. And we have, usually there's a topic. You don't have to have a topic, but we'll have a topic today of just what was your experience? What did you learn about empathy today? And it's also going to be posted in the chat, so you'll be able to see that question. And in the circle, we always say it's whatever's on your mind. So we don't restrict it to just the topic. If there's something you feel strongly about, you can talk about that. So in the circle, the speaker is going to, the facilitator is going to be the first listener. You're going to speak on the topic that I just mentioned. You say a few words, ideas, maybe an idea or two, which is usually 30 to 45 seconds. And then you pause, and your listener is going to reflect back their understanding of what they heard you say. So for the psychiatrists here, Cynthia and Judith, you know how this works. The active listening part is it's core to the healing professions. And then as a speaker, you share, the listener is going to reflect back their understanding. And you as the speaker, you check, did they really understand what I said? If they did, great. You just continue with your train of thoughts, say another idea or two, pause, and then you'll get a reflection again. And we're going to have time limits. So the total time limit will be 3 minutes for your turn. And then if your listener didn't understand you, you can reframe what you said and say it in other words. And then as the listener, you're listening to the speaker, you're focusing on what they say, giving them your full attention. And then you're just sort of recapping in your own words your understanding of what they said and meant or feeling in their sharing. And the process continues like this. Once the 3 minutes is up, then the listener becomes a speaker and they choose someone in the circle to speak to. And we continue that same process, and we'll be going for about a little bit over an hour in the circles today. And if you speak, you don't have anything to say as a speaker, you can just say, oh, I feel fully heard. And that just passes your turn on. And if you're the listener and the speaker is going on for a long time, you think, oh, I'm never going to be able to remember everything that they're saying. You can ask them to pause just to reflect, but you don't want to ask them a question or interject your own thoughts or, say, oh, I feel so sorry for what you're going through. You're only wanting to reflect and sense into what they're saying and reflect back or recap what they are saying to their satisfaction, which is really the goal of this process. So the empathy circle, that basic structure, I find is the most practical way to model kind of a constructive, empathic relationship or an empathic way of being. And and in terms of genius, since our topic is empathy and genius, I think that the empathy circle has a quality of genius to it, in the sense that it's sort of like the minimal viable process for holding a mutually empathic relationship. So let's go through, I just go through like, how does the empathy circle address some of those criticisms or complaints or problems that are sometimes associated with, being an empath? One is you're overly sensitive to other feelings. You feel them deeply. So in the empathy circle, you can hear someone else deeply, their feelings, their anger, their sorrow, their grief. But in the process of saying, oh, I hear that you're feeling sad, you're feeling angry, you're feeling grief. And in that process of reflecting back your understanding, you are feeling what they're feeling, but you're not taking it on. It's not like, it's not overwhelming your own sense of self, that you're reflecting it back. And that really helps with feeling deeply, but then also staying grounded. And also there's the idea of you get lost in others' feelings, that in the sense of doing the reflection of someone else, by reflecting, or recapping what they've said, you will not get as lost in what they're saying, because your sense of self comes up and say, this is what I'm hearing. And then you have your sense of self is identified there as well. And that's really keeping you from getting lost in other people's feelings. And it also helps with getting overloaded with others' feelings, because you're again reflecting, and you will also have turn after 3 minutes, you will have a chance to share. So there oftentimes it's like your sense of boundaries gets lost as, being an empath. But by having you have a turn to be heard, you are getting a chance to be heard yourself and be able to share. It's not like you just absorbing everything other people are throwing at you. You're getting a chance to share with others, as well as there's just not one person who's dominating the conversation, because everybody in the circle is getting a chance to be heard and understood. And again, that sense of the boundaries, self-other distinction, because of that reflection, you create that sense of self-other distinction. And also because what I find is in the circle, multiple people will be reflecting what you're saying. So you're getting sort of energy, feeling from each of them, which is creating a sense of, I think, a sense of greater a self. And then, and this is also maybe with the definition of empathy, that empathy is often seen as an individualistic, from an individualistic point of view, that I am empathizing with you, or you as an individual are empathizing with other. But true empathy for me is the relationship between people. So the empathy circle holds a mutually empathic space, which is what I see as empathy is. The fullness of empathy is that shared empathic space. And so when people say that they have compassion fatigue or empathy fatigue, what it is, someone is not being heard, right? It's not a fatigue. It's a deficit of empathy. You, if you're feeling exhausted, you are not being heard by others. And that's what the empathy circle does, is it creates a space for you to feel heard. When I feel stressed and overwhelmed or what have you, I have my empathy buddies that I go to, and they just listen to me to hear me, and I can just feel that stress and constriction, that feeling of stress and constriction in my body, that when I'm sharing, I think Kathy's here, she's one of my empathy buddies, that I can feel my inner sort of feelings, that stress in the body sort of release, and deeper feelings kind of flow out and start flowing, more of a flow than versus that burnout and fatigue that is that feeling of constriction. So yeah, I guess that's I don't know, how are we doing with the rooms, DJ?
Ready, ready
we're
to
great.
go.
So this is, this was just an intro to the empathy circle. So you're going to go into the empathy circle. You're going to experience what it's like, and then we'll come back for a bit of a debrief that you'll get to share what your experience was in the empathy circle. Okay, DJ.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready. We can get started. I think the others will come.
Yes.
So our topic is, what was your experience? What did you learn from the summit so far? And talk about whatever's alive for you. And did you say you're doing timekeeping?
I got your time.
Yeah. Okay. So we're ready to start. We have 3-minute turns, and I'll be the first listener to model the listening. So if who would like to start, I'm here to listen.
Do we have any volunteers who would like to speak first?
I'd like to see someone do it first.
Okay.
I will take that role then.
All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the goal of an empath circle?
Okay, well, I'll address that. So, okay, do you want to start, Kara, and we'll then I'll maybe address that later.
Address it as we model?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, do you just continue? We'll getting into a discussion. I'll just address that.
Time has started. What is my top takeaways or my things that are alive for me right now? My top takeaway is that the sharing of empathy itself is the result.
So I'm hearing that the top takeaway from today is the summit has been that the sharing of the empathy is the result itself. Is the top result.
Both the receiving, as someone who loves empathy, I love to hold that space for someone else. It just feels good. But the power of having it held for me, and kind of the intimidation factor of having somebody listen to me. I am always excited and surprised by that.
Yeah, you're always surprised about the experience of being heard by someone in your circle.
My first time that I spoke at one, I think we're talking 5 or more years ago now, I was so used to holding the space to have my words reflected back to me. I was like, oh, wow, I feel so heard. I feel seen at the same time. Okay, this is good.
Yeah, it's like when you felt it was like, hey, this feels pretty good. I'm really feeling heard and seen. This feels pretty good.
Yeah, I've been hooked ever since.
And you've been hooked ever since with the empathic listening.
I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay, I'll speak to Beata.
Yes.
So yeah, there was a question about what's the purpose of the empathy circle, and as I was explaining all the benefits of the empathy circle, I think those were sort of the addressing that question in my talk.
So you were asked what are the benefits, what is the purpose of an empathy circle, and in your introduction, when you were explaining the benefits of empathy circles, you feel like you answered this question.
Yeah, and just sort of the recap is that it's like Kara mentioned, one benefit or a purpose of the circle is to feel heard and seen. Because here, everyone in the circle is going to have a chance to be heard and seen and be heard deeply. And that's one of the purposes is that, it's just not one person doing all the talking, but everyone gets to be heard and seen.
So just to recap, that's something that Kara was referring to as one that is main benefit of empathy circles is that everybody has a chance to feel heard and seen, and also feel heard and seen on a very deep level. And it's not like one person is doing all the talking or one person is doing all the listening, but everyone has a chance to be seen and heard in this shared space.
Yeah, and also we're slowing the conversation down. It came up, somebody in the speaking was talking about, oh yeah, it was Judith was saying, you need to slow things down, and this is really slowing the conversation down. And so it's just a benefit, like the circle, this process, the active listening is core to the whole healing professions, that you listen to others, and that's a very healing experience. I mean, it's core to therapy and counseling and so forth. So we're practicing that.
So in this space, in the empathy circles, we kind of slow the conversation down and we focus on active listening. And active listening is is at the core of all the healing processes, right? Of therapy and all other healing.
Yeah, and so there's just a lot of benefits with the self-other distinction, that if you're, like somebody mentioned, in their family, they they're not feeling heard, they're in conflict. If you bring the family together into a family empathy circle, it will really help with everyone feeling heard and being able to work through conflicts and come up to some kind of positive steps.
Mm-hmm. So a good example of the benefits of empathy circle is when you have a family where not everyone feels heard and seen, and there may be even some conflict between family members. So when they come together to the shared space of an empathy circle, then they can create this environment when everybody feels heard and seen, and they can even work through this conflict and come up with some positive steps to follow.
Exactly. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. So Michelle, will you be my listener?
Sure.
So I was really looking forward to this empathy summit because I specialize in cognitive empathy, but I've never explored affective empathy.
So you are looking forward to this summit because you specialize in some sort of empathy, but cognitive empathy, and this is a different version of empathy for you to look at.
Mm-hmm. So I specialize in cognitive empathy, and this is more about connecting with others on a spiritual level, right? It's more about bodily empathy, and that's something that I've never explored.
So you specialize in cognitive empathy, and the summit was a little bit different because it brought you into the spiritual part and the embodiment part, which is a different angle to empathy.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I would say I struggle with, because I recognize that when we connect with others on this spiritual levels or other levels that don't include any cognitive processes or cognitive process to a limited extent, then I think that we might misinterpret the other person's emotions and misunderstand them.
So I'm connecting with you, but okay, so you see some of the limitations of, I can't repeat that exactly the way you said it because I was tuning into what you actually meant. Say that again. Sorry.
Okay. So when we connect with others on spiritual level, right? And we don't incorporate too much of the cognitive process, right? Then we might misunderstand the other person's emotions, right? Because we didn't put some effort into understanding their perspective, their experience, how they navigate the world, how they experience and perceive the world.
So you said in connecting with someone on a cognitive level, it may not, it's very different from the spiritual level. You might be missing something that you would otherwise be able to see. And I'm sorry, I didn't quite say that the way you said that.
Uh-huh. Let me try to rephrase it. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm struggling. I'm struggling with communication, I
No,
think.
you're good. It's me.
So, so what I'm trying to say is that maybe I can provide an example. So, for instance, people's brains are wired differently, right? So because our brains are wired differently, we might express our emotions differently, right? We might even experience emotions differently, right? We know that, for instance, people on the autism spectrum, right? They don't read body language and they don't express their emotions through body language, right? So when we try to empathize with a person who's on the autism spectrum, we might misinterpret their emotions, right? Because we might not see a smile on their face, we might not see their body language reflecting what they're feeling, right? So in this kind of situation, we might have to first get to know them, listen to them, so that we can understand how they experience and express their emotions. And that's something that may be a challenge when you're an empath and you want to connect with people on this affective level, on the spiritual level. I
Okay,
hope that explains it.
wow, you have a lot that you're trying to put together in your brain, but you express it pretty well. So everyone's brain's different, and everyone experiences and expresses emotions differently. So as far as interpreting what those emotions are on a spiritual level, it may be limiting to you. It may be a little bit better to reflect, to get to know them better, to see what the body is actually saying to you. So you're getting to know them. So, okay, that's, I think, what you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I always advocate
that was the
for...
time too.
Thank you. That was good.
Thank you. I feel fully heard.
You really would. I'm glad.
Select your listener, maybe Craig, who hasn't
hi.
yet.
Yeah. Hi there.
Michelle will be speaking now. So if you want, you can speak to him. It's your
How
choice.
long do I have?
3
Edwin?
minutes.
3 minutes. Okay.
Remember to pause so he can reflect back.
Gotcha. So I guess I'm glad to have been a part of this. I loved Judith. I think she gets both the psychological and the spiritual part, and she's trying to normalize it. I think she's absolutely an empath. But not everybody is going to, but she's normalizing it as much as possible because everybody really is empathic.
Okay, let's pause. Let's, Craig, if you're going to, what did you hear Michelle say?
Oh. Yeah, she said that she believes that Judith is a true empath, and that it's very important that everyone involved in the conversation be heard, and as well as listen well to what is being said. And that she's quite pleased with the conference. So am I.
Okay.
I was pleasantly surprised, and I had not correlated in my experience together empathy and listening as much. That was very, and it is in the circles in that same way, the listening part of it, which is I don't want to say a good strategy, but it's a good way to help other people feel heard. Did I say too much?
Can you just reflect back what Michelle said? Just what did you hear Michelle just say, Craig?
Yeah, that these empathic circles are very important, healthy, because people are able to genuinely feel that they've been heard or acknowledged, that their presence and their thoughts and feelings have been received appreciatively.
Did he get that? feel he understood you?
He did pretty well. He did pretty well.
Good.
I don't know. What else would I say? I loved Michael Smith. I just loved, there was a lot of things in this summit that I thought were right on point. Right on point.
Yeah.
You want to reflect?
Um,
And when she pauses, you just reflect back what you understood
okay,
she
yeah,
said.
Let's see. I just wanted to say that.
No, just what did you hear Michelle say? You'll get your turn as soon as she's done.
All right. Well, he said that he was quite pleased with the different inputs and that certain ones stood out more saliently, and that he has been greatly rewarded by this empathy symposium, and thinks it's a really good thing.
Yeah, and that was the time, and I'll just finish. She also said she just loves Michael Smith, and she loves Judith.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
you gotta get those emotions. I mean,
okay,
that was big.
sorry. Yeah, I guess
you got to reflect that love.
Mind was kind of
yeah. But now it's your turn to speak. Okay. Select the listener, and they'll reflect back. So you can select anyone that you would like.
Yeah, I.
Who are you selecting?
Them all.
Who are you speaking to?
But I
Craig.
I
Craig, who are you speaking to? First, select your listener.
Let's see.
I can listen if you want.
Okay. Yeah, I'll
okay. I'm listening.
Yeah, I think that center is really great for getting going there in Santa Barbara for empathetic interactions and conferences. And I particularly, well, I liked everyone that spoke, but Cynthia Higgins, MD, really, I thought she did a real, absolutely brilliant job of conveying a lot of information. Very, very effective. And I liked her acknowledgement of angels.
Okay, let me just reflect back what I'm hearing. So I'm hearing you're just impressed with the Empathy Center, that there's a place now for empathy. And, you like what you heard from everyone, but especially Cynthia. You really appreciate what Cynthia had to say. And you're just saying that aspect about angels really spoke to you.
Yes, I agree. And I've had experience with angels myself. And I think they can come at the right time in one's life to help. I believe there are angelic presences around. My mother was a great believer in that also.
And you believe you've had angelic experiences, and they come to you at the right time, and your mother was a big believer too of angels, so it's very meaningful to you.
Right. Yeah. I had some quite astounding experiences, often at a time where you say that there was some considerable dangers in my life, actually, or perhaps to my life.
So you had times when there was like danger to your life, and you were visited by angels. It sounded like a sort of a healing, supportive experience.
Yeah, for sure. It's a beautiful experience. It really restores your faith.
It was a beautiful experience that restored your faith in life and humanity.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I can show, but I wrote a book here called Wonder Streams of the Soul. It's mainly poetry. I just wanted to show that. I've been quite a life. I'm actually a wildlife ecologist, but I'm also a writer, and I also play the piano and compose melodies. But so I'd show that the book that's recently out, that's volume 1, and volume 2 has recently been published as well. So
you just want to share. You want to share your book, The Wonders of. I didn't see that. Was that the Wonders?
Yeah, it's called the Wonder Streams of the Soul.
Oh, the Wonder of the. Wonder Streams of the Souls, and you're a
Yes.
wildlife biologist, is that?
Ecologist.
Ecologist, and this
Yeah.
is, and you wrote this book of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've
And that
actually
was,
written throughout my life, and I belong to the Nevada Poetry Society. So I have a little poem I'd like to share if you think it's
so
appropriate.
that was the time, but I'll just reflect that you had your
Oh,
3 minutes. So you're a poet and you belong to a poetry group, and you're like
Yeah.
excited about maybe sharing a poem when it
Yeah.
becomes your turn again.
Yeah,
So,
that's
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'll speak. It's my turn now to speak, and then I'll speak to Kara.
I'm listening.
Yeah, this is, I'm really excited about this, that we did this summit on empaths, because there's such a big following for the topic of empaths, and that we should speak to, like I was saying about the empathy circle, to kind of redefine the definition of empaths, not as like, oh, all overloaded and having all these struggles, but it's people who are strong, grounded, centered. So that's kind of the redefinition I'd like to have.
I heard you're very excited about having done this summit and being able to reach out to this very large following of people who follow empathy and empaths, and redefining empath not as somebody who's weak or emotional, but somebody who's strong and capable and a guide.
And what we're doing here, I think, is sort of a first step towards that. If empaths would take part in empathy circles and really understand the energy, the dynamics of what's happening here, and how it can address, all those negative things that people talk about, I think it could really help to redefine this being an empath.
And I hear that the empathy circle is really just a great strategy for empowering the empaths of the world, to allow them to experience the reciprocalness of empathy, and it will address some of the deficits and the withdrawals that come from it when you get a reciprocal experience.
Yeah, and it's so, if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, an empath would say, hey, I need an empathy circle, right? I need, in my family, I can call for an empathy circle, in my work, with my friends, in my community, that it's a real tool to create that mutually empathic space. It's like a first step. It's so, genius, powerful, it seems to me.
I'm seeing a vision of the world from Edwin's point of view, that is a place where when someone is overwhelmed or in a heightened sense, they can just say, I need an empathy circle. And the community, the family, the workplace, they have a tool they can use to get past that together.
And our goal, I didn't mention it in with our empathy center, is to teach every person in the world how to take part in and facilitate an empathy circle. So that's what we, it is a first step. Yeah.
The goal, I hear, of the entire empathy circle facilitation movement is to teach everyone how to do empathy circles so that they can have that experience, so they have that tool in their tool belt.
And the other part that is really relevant, I think, is the free speech aspect. It's like, say what you want, share any feeling. And I appreciated Michelle also talking about feelings, getting right into the feeling aspect of it, because I think that's so important, that we think in terms of the felt experience and are able to talk about those feelings. Yeah.
So what I hear there is really appreciating Michelle bringing feelings into it and talking about that shared experience, being the felt experience of being with other people, and how powerful and impactful that actually is.
Yeah, I feel very heard. Thanks, Kara.
I will speak to Michelle. Will you be my listener?
Sure.
Fantastic. Oops. Sorry, I bumped my timer thing. And now we're good. Okay. I always need to take an extra breath at the very beginning because I hold space to listen, and now I have to download everything that just happened. Give me just a sec. Okay. What's alive for me? I mean, I love the vision that Edwin has for the world. The first time I met him and experienced one of these, I signed in and have never signed out.
You love Edwin and his vision for the world. The first time you came, You were on board and you have not left.
Yes, yes. In fact, I actually use it with my family. That came up earlier, like where places you could use this. My parents and I were co-housing for a while, and we co-housed very well, but also I had a tiny human and a husband, which adds dynamic. And so we would have weekly meetings, and we would start each of the meetings with an empathy circle. I'll pause there.
Thank you. So, you've actually used the empathy circle with your own family. You co-housed with your parents, and you had your son, no, your husband and maybe a son, I think, and you'd have weekly meetings.
Yes. And we would start our meetings with an empathy circle so that each person got their opportunity to just say whatever they needed to say. I'll pause there.
That's great. Start their meeting with an empathy circle so everyone gets to say what they want to say.
And the craziest part of that was the meetings became shorter and shorter because most of the time, the irritations, the frustrations, the, humaning with other human part of life that gets weird just gets taken out of the equation when you get a chance to voice it. I'll pause.
So the meetings got shorter and shorter because the frustrations were less and less because you're able to voice these frustrations. They weren't building up.
Yeah. And to double down on how cool that was, we wouldn't even have to deal with any of it. Like once it was voiced, it was like it was done. And they were like, so do we need to like replan cleaning charts? Do we need to like try? I'm a doer, right? So I'm like, what do we need to do about this? And they're like, no, actually, I feel good. I feel fully heard. I'm done.
So it actually solved some problems for you. It resolved those problems unless it was done, like everything was streamlined during the meetings a little bit more.
Yep. And I have started doing that in the facilitation groups I do with leadership. I work with neurospicy leaders, and it did the same thing.
So it worked within a corporate leadership setting. I wonder how that, yeah, go ahead. That's what you said.
I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay, good. Mind you, I have to take notes as you're saying it. I don't know why that is. I'm just like, I can't hold all this information.
It's the perfect spot to get reflected. Who are you speaking to?
Say it again.
Who are you speaking to? You have to select your listener.
Because they can reflect this for you.
Oh. Wait.
Who would you like to listen to? It's your turn to speak, and you can select your listener now.
Yeah, but I already spoke. We're doing it
you
again?
get multiple times. We keep going. You get multiple
Oh my
turns.
God in heaven.
Yes.
Oh my God in heaven.
But the first thing you do is select your listener.
I'm gonna pick Vita. Is that right? Did I say that right, Vita?
It's Beata.
Beata.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I can get that. That's great. You want me to speak? What am I speaking about? Gosh, life has become very busy. I will just keep this very general because it just seems like it's rolling very fast lately.
So you're sharing with us that your life has become really busy and it's moving really fast.
Yeah. In a good way, I would say, I love the fact that I am learning from every situation and every angle. Like we're just so different from one another, even in this summit, just to hear where people put things and how they put them and what their what their experience is and what their goal is. It's very unique.
So you're sharing with us that that you had a very positive experience and you love learning from other people about their perspectives and their experiences and their goals and how they put all those concepts together and overall learning from others.
Yeah. So what I would say is I would say almost equally as troubling is when I see something come from an angle that I don't necessarily understand or grasp or see the value of, or not yet. So it's just, my little box is my little box, and it's very humbling because it's my little box. That's what it is. And I can't just shift the whole world with what that is. And I might be able to shift maybe a little bit of them, but maybe they don't need to shift at all. Like, that's like the bottom line of where I'm going to. I just think there's so multiple ways of processing
Pause
what
for reflection.
and it's based on what your experience has been, what your path has been, period. Yeah. Sorry, that was so long.
That's okay. Let me see if I understand it correctly. So you especially enjoy listening to people who come from different angles, right? And sometimes you may even struggle to understand what they're saying, or sometimes you may even disagree. I'm not sure if I understood it correctly yet. And you're reflecting that you have your own little box and you're shifting the whole world according to this little box, but sometimes you acknowledge that maybe the world doesn't need to be shifted, right? I'm not sure if I understood it.
My little box is my little box. I'm like, it's just my box, right? So,
and you also shared that people have these different perspectives because they experience the world in different ways, right?
Yeah.
And that was the time.
Mm-hmm.
You feel heard, Michelle?
Yes, that was great.
Okay, we got that.
Mm-hmm. So should I pick a listener? Or
Yeah,
do
whoever
we have
you
enough
want.
time?
Yeah, we have 25 minutes or so to go.
Wow.
Okay. So Kara, will you be my listener?
Yes, I am listening.
So it's really interesting because I've noticed a pattern because every time I attend this empathy summits, I've noticed that people have many different definitions of the word empathy. Now I learned that there are different definitions of the word empath, and also different approaches to people who may lack empathy to some extent as well.
Oh, what I'm hearing is that you're in coming to so many of these summits, what you are hearing is the facets of empathy, right? The multiple facets and definitions of what empathy itself is, or what it is to be an empath, and how to use that in situations.
Mm-hmm. And also to this problem of some people not empathizing with others. I've noticed that the speakers had a different approach to this issue. Some were saying that it may be even some kind of mental wellness disorder or something like that, that people may lack empathy just by nature. Others were referring to empathy deficits. So there are different approaches to this issue.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is a recognition of how different people react to those who are having a hard time showing empathy for any number of reasons, whether it is a cognitive and mental brain structure actual lack, or simply a trained lack, or so many that we've heard, and how each speaker kind of came with their own tools and tricks on how to navigate that space.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I have a very strong belief that empathy, the ability to empathize, is kind of like a continuum. And some people are more empathetic and others are less empathetic. Yeah, go ahead.
I heard there is that you have your personal belief system is that empathy is a continuum, and there is absolutely those who have more or have less in that space.
Mm-hmm. But I believe that it's, to some extent, it's also a trained skill. So I think that people can practice empathy, they can learn about empathy, they can learn with different tactics of listening to others, active listening is a great skill on the great way to practice empathy and to improve empathy.
So what I heard there is that you are recognizing that there is a nature element to it, but also a nurture that people can train and learn and grow and understand. Specifically, active listening was mentioned and how that tool can be used to develop.
Mm-hmm. So I think that people can actually move in different directions on this empathy continuum, and I believe that pretty much every person can actually improve their empathy skills.
Okay, and as a final reflection, what I heard there, I think, is that we can move our way up and down on the continuum. We can develop our skills, and everyone is capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Wonderful. Craig, will you be my listener?
Yes, I will. Great.
Wonderful. I'm downloading. Give me just a minute. I love bringing the conversation around empathy into both the quantum mechanics of the cognitive space. I'll pause there.
So you like to consider subject empathy from the point of view of the quantum mechanics of the science of physics. As I've studied that, I went to Berkeley for my undergraduate.
You only want to reflect back what she said. When it's your turn, you can add
So
the extra.
In physics, we studied about.
So yes,
mechanics.
Craig,
Yeah.
I absolutely love going into that space. I also have done some study into that space. I work with a geneticist, and we talk about empathy at an epigenetic level. I'll pause for reflection there.
So yeah, you have also delved into that in additionally from a genetic point of view. It's also quite fascinating. So I think we have a lot in common to talk about, Cara.
I find that this conversation is so empowering around empathy that it hits on so much of that nature and nurture zone.
Right. Yeah, that all has a great parallel with biology and ecology. So
and how the biology and the ecology parallels that. Yes.
Right, and the psychology as well. Quite exciting. Quite exciting, actually.
You did my excitement. I do find it very exciting. I find that having the opportunity to train people to reflect versus respond or ask questions, it's so not a natural part of conversation. It really allows you to hear someone else. I'll pause for reflection.
Yeah, so you emphasize the importance of reflection when someone expresses himself, that the listener reflects on the more in-depth meaning of what the person is saying.
Yeah, and what a great tool. So I do leadership development, and teaching leaders to reflect first rather than answer or ask a question. To get a human to just reflect what they heard is such a powerful skill. I'll pause there for reflection.
Yes, that in true leadership, it's very important that leaders be excellent listeners and that they reflect to a higher dimension on what is being conveyed to them by those who are talking or seeing them there.
Thank you, Craig. I feel very hurt. Will you pick your listener? It is your time to pick a listener.
Okay. I'll pick Edwin. I'll pick Edwin.
Listening.
And I've always had a lot of empathy with the other life forms. Since I was a boy, I had a special sense of my relatedness and the importance and the actual beingness of the other so-called other life forms.
So since childhood, you've had a real sense of empathy for other life forms, being animals, nature.
Yes. And I think that's so important. And I would also like to say that I think it's not really possible to separate our mental life from our emotional life, because in my studies, and for years, I was sort of like a professional student. I just kept going back and going back. I would take breaks, maybe even a few years, but I kept going back to school all the time, and like an addiction. And I had all kinds of courses, philosophy, art, music, of course, all kinds of biology, evolution, ecology. I became a real seeker of truth, a lot of history, by the way. And I came to the conclusion that that any thought, even on the most seemingly objective or materialistic or physical subject, there was always some feeling associated with that conception. So being
let me reflect back if I can.
Okay.
So you were a perennial student, always learning and taking all kinds of different classes, and you sort of dug into that. You don't think that there is this mental, this cognitive and emotional difference, and what you're seeing that even the smallest thought has an emotional aspect, a felt experience to it.
Yeah, exactly. What is called mental or purely mental activity actually does involve the feeling side, because there's a reaction, there's kind of a judgment going on, and there's also an integration going on. So I was a great ponder. I was quite a ponder about all these things that were presented to me. And I was also a sub-vocalizer when I read.
So you're really wondering about this, that you just see that you can't disassociate thought and feelings.
Right.
That's just your experience, from your experience.
Yeah, and became very concerned about people's relationship with what I call the great rest of life, and how we're treating these other sentient beings in slightly different forms, who actually we depend upon. So why should we be so egotistical as to think that we are the main subject of importance?
Yeah, so you're kind of dismayed by this, not seeing the connection we have with nature, that we just see ourselves as important, and people just don't see how we're really connected with all of life. And and that was the time too, so it was your turn. So
okay,
Kara held up the clock, which is the time. So Beata, could I speak to you?
Yes, I'll be your listener.
Yeah, I really agree with Craig's comment about the cognitive and the emotional or the affective, that you can't really pull them apart that easily. Yeah.
So you agree with what Craig was sharing, that this cognitive and emotional aspect of empathy, you cannot just pull them apart and consider them separately?
Yeah. I think we maybe even need a whole new sort of a way of looking at it, because I think there's this mind body or mind feeling dichotomy. I think it's just not accurate. It's just not refined enough.
So you're thinking that maybe we need a completely new way of looking at it, right? Because there's this dichotomy of mind and feeling, but maybe we should refine it and find a different method.
Yeah, because I did a couple empathy circles and the topic was, what does reason feel like? So what is the felt experience of reason, the mind? Because it has that you cannot not feel it, you know? So yeah.
So you facilitated some empathy circles on the topic of how reason feels like, right? So it's impossible not to feel the reason, right? So it's all interconnected, and that's why we cannot just explore them separately.
Yeah, so sometimes reason is like, oh, you control thoughts and feelings, and that's like called reason, right? And how those thoughts and feelings relate, or how those feelings relate to each other. But even in that, there's a felt experience, right? It might be feelings of constriction, or there might be, even if you're analyzing, you have constriction, or you have, there's a whole felt experience that you cannot not feel. It seems to me. So yeah, so just that whole dichotomy. I don't use the cognitive and affective empathy. I think it's not a good definition.
So when we think about reason, we think about controlling our thoughts and feelings, but we often forget about the felt experience, right? Even if we analyze, we still have this felt experience. So you're actually advocating for abandoning this affective and cognitive empathy and looking for a completely different approach.
Yeah, and what I say is there's empathy, just like you're listening to me, you're sensing into my experience. I see that as like a other-oriented empathy. You're feeling into my experience, and I call it that empathy. And then there's another form which I would call imaginative, where we do role playing, and that's like another aspect of empathy, but don't have time to go into that.
So from your perspective, there are these two aspects. So sensing the other person's experience, right? Like feeling into their experience, right? And also this imaginative, right? Empathy, where we do kind of a role playing and we step into the other person's shoes.
Yeah, I feel very heard. Thanks, Bea.
Thank you. So let's see. So Craig, will you be my listener? You're on mute,
Craig.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Beata. Thank you. I'll be your listener. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a really interesting conversation. Now I feel that I may personally have a bias because I'm a highly analytical person. So when I approach any kind of interactions with others, I approach them from a very analytical standpoint.
Excuse me, let me turn my cell phone on. So you might have a difficulty separating the objective from the subjective. And that's because of your past history as being a strict analyst, objective analyst in your profession or in your life. But you recognize its value, the value to consider this very valuable approach to thoughts and feelings and expression.
So what I meant was that I think that each and every one of us has a bias, right? And this bias comes from many different sources, right? It comes from the cultures that shaped us, right? The environment we grew up in, but also the strengths and weaknesses that we were born with, right? Meaning how our brain is wired, right? And I think that all of those biases have an impact on our approach to empathy.
Yeah, so you're saying that we all have inherent biases or blind spots, prejudices, and that this is due to our background, our family, and our culture and our education. That you're open always to encountering these and growing. So you do recognize that, and that's a large part of the positive aspect of our communication and in helping each other and in helping oneself.
But it also kind of guides the ways that we empathize with one another, right? So I think that there are people who have very strong emotional intelligence, right? And who are able to connect with others on this emotional level, right? So they empathize with others using this route, but there are other people who are more analytical and they rely on reason more heavily, right? And I think that maybe there's no wrong or right way to empathize with others, right? Maybe everyone has a different style, and that's okay.
So you're saying there are certain people that are quite gifted to appreciate the emotional state of others, and that's good, you know, and that there are other people that have keen and penetrating ability to analyze more from an intellectual point of view. But that you know, I would just like to interject that I think that
it would, instead of interjecting, it'll be your turn. You just reflect,
okay.
and
Yeah,
I'll just
so,
add the last piece that
yeah.
Beata said was that all ways are welcome. Everybody is different,
Yeah, that's right. So
yeah.
you're supposed to try to appreciate everyone, and everyone has a unique background, and appreciate them for their fortes.
Yeah, and now it's your turn, Craig. You'll have just about 3 minutes, and then we're going to join the main room. So you're the last.
So I pick someone to, well, I'll pick Cara, Jean, then.
I'm listening.
Yes. Now, as an ecologist and conservationist and animal rights person, and wilderness rights person for that matter, I find myself often having to argue on behalf of the downtrodden, particularly animals, endangered species. I've worked a lot in South America as well as here in North America and in other places around the world. And what I find is that actually my knowledge and my appreciation of ecology and biology and the sentient beingness of other creatures that share this earth, that knowledge, which is based on science too, as well as a greater spiritual appreciation, actually makes me quite emotional. That those reasons can make me quite emotional. For example, when I'm also a wild horse advocate and a wild burro advocate, and I can become quite emotional, and yet I find that this is tied to my learning, what I really know about them, and it's scientifically proven. So it's not just like I'm up on an ivory tower, you know, and it doesn't mean anything to me. It does mean a lot to me, and I believe in the right of the wild horses to viable populations and to.
If you want to pause to reflect.
What I hear there is that you are an advocate of the world and have been studying deeply this at a bio level, but also spiritually and emotionally, so that you are deeply impacted by your understanding of the planet and the species on it, and the multiple levels of sentience that are not necessarily always recognized. And in that connection, you get excited, angry, happy, all of the feelings when
Yeah.
you're advocating for our planet.
And that's
Yeah,
just the
oh,
time.
yeah.
Just give you a heads up. We have about 40 seconds. We're going to go back to the main room. So your turn was a little bit shorter just because we have to get back.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Cara. Greatly feel appreciated. Thank you so much.
This was wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
And we're heading to the main room. You can either wait to be moved or you can hit the leave room. We'll move you back, and then we'll be doing a bit of a debrief so you can think about how your experience was, and we'll have a chance for you to debrief in the main room. See you there. Thanks, everybody. It was a real pleasure.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Take it away, Kara.
I think Ruth is going to do our debrief. Ruth, if you're up for it, I can do it if you don't want to. You have to unmute, my Ruth.
That's twice I've done that. Thank you very much. I would love to, Cara. Are you sure?
Absolutely. Get it. Get it.
All right. All right. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back from our empathy circles. We'd love to hear about your experience in the empathy circles. Please share. Okay, here we go. So take 30 seconds. How was your experience in the empathy circles? Just raise your hand and share for about 30 seconds. Yeah, how was your experience in the empathy circle?
I'm unmuted. I'm B, and it was new experience because we had new people on, some that had never done this before but thought they knew how, and others that that liked it. And I apologize to two members of our group that didn't get a chance to say goodbye at the last moment. Thank you. It was great.
Thanks, B. Good to see you.
Thank
Cara.
you.
I don't think Larry Love's here to say it. I love empathy circles. And every time the growth, the understanding the depths that it gets to so fast, I love empathy circles.
Thank you, Cara. Bob. We invite you to unmute when you're ready, Bob.
Okay, I now have the button. I am so grateful for the awareness and the consciousness and the oneness that was talked about today, and I feel so much closer to it. So thank you, Edwin, and everyone for making this possible. I've been richly blessed. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Bob. Pamela.
You're muted, Pamela.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Pamela. Bill.
You just need to unmute.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say I had a great circle. And I put in a link if you're interested into more trainings and things like that. It's in the chat. And the key takeaway is that our trainings don't seek to put empathy into you. We don't teach you empathy, but to reveal your empathic self that's to yourself that's already there. So we seek to give you space to experience it and start your own unique empathic journey. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing. Yes, thank you so much, Bill. Yeah, and exploring our own unique journeys. We appreciate that so much. Pamela, we see your hand. If you're able to unmute, we'd love to hear from you.
You have to, because of the settings, you have to request she unmute. Otherwise, she won't be able to unmute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been doing that. And it usually works. I don't know, maybe she has her hand raised. Do you want your hand raised, Pamela? We'll just lower the hand for now. Okay.
All right,
Go ahead.
Stephen, would you like to share?
Well, I
yeah.
came in after, I wasn't in the empathy circle, but I
Okay.
do enjoy that, and we had a wonderful and lovely discussion about empathy in our group of people that were running late.
Lovely. Okay, over to you, DJ. Thank you so much.
Okay.
We still have maybe we can have our speakers share how the experience
Oh,
was. Michelle,
yeah. Thank you.
Would you hate to call on you, but usually we go around try to hear from everybody. But if you'd like to share how was the circle that we were in for you?
I thought it was really good. I mean, I think I have been to one a couple of years ago, I've been to it. I think it's probably a good opportunity for people to reflect on how they think, because they're not going to necessarily be judged on what they're saying. Someone's just reflecting back what they have to say. And it's an opportunity to get something acknowledged or off your chest or validation for the most part. And then I recognized, I'm like, there's a lot of different definitions of empathy. And there's this kind of empathy, and then and then I'm like, well, I know about the empath, and I know the different types of empath. So it's there's somewhat of a disconnect between how I see being an empath and the empathy, quote unquote, movement. I see a huge value in having people reflect, but I also think it's important for people to understand how they're feeling and understand their journey as a person. You can call it empath or not, and what they're learning and how they're being and how they're feeling, because feeling is everything. You know, it trumps thinking and it trumps words. So whatever words you're using, if you're not feeling whole and put together, you can have everything and everything feels like nothing. So it's about helping people be who they are and helping them exercise that. So I think the circle, the speaking aspect of it is going to be extremely helpful as an introduction to people and as a mitigating factor when people come from different angles. So it kind of introduces you to the fact that we all have a very different mind and a different experience and a different value system. So if you can stay there and listen to someone without being reactive, it's like training in progress for you.
Training in progress, like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cynthia, would you like to share?
Yes, that was my first empathy circle. And as I mentioned to everyone, it was extremely validating. So very, very enjoyable experience. And, one of the things that I found was that being able to be heard and to share some of the excitement just kind of kept the excitement going. So I found that a lot of fun. I really did. So thank you, everyone.
And anyone else want to share? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Joy.
Just how was your experience? What?
I got Joy with a
Joy?
hand up.
Okay, Joy.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I learned that sometimes mediation is necessary, and sometimes you just have to take that dead fish out of your pocket and throw it on the table. Because if you don't get that dead fish out of your pocket, it's gonna keep stinking up the room.
Great. So empathy circles are great for processing dead fish. a good dead fish processing system process. Anyone else? I'd like to get here a couple more. In that case, we're ready to move on to the next DJ. Shall I do the closing and
Well, Michelle, you had said that you wanted to do a little bit of the closing, right? Yeah. So we put that in the
sure,
in the script. So are you prepared for that? Maybe take like 3 minutes to do.
That's
Can you do something?
fine. All right.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So what we're
Go
going to
ahead.
do, I think, before you begin, Michelle, I think what we're going to do is we're going to let Edwin have some closing remarks. We're going to let anybody who wants to have a closing remark, Kara, Jana, Ruth, Jeanette, anybody, the speakers, Cynthia, and yourself, Michelle, any closing remarks for this wonderful, incredible summit? And thank you so much for attending. And thank you so much for being in an empathy circle. It was just such a privilege to be with folks who care about empathy and who center themselves and ground themselves in the love of being an empath, and just sharing this incredible experience of being from all over the world. We had a gentleman from Nuruddin Tijani. He didn't look up the correct time and he wanted to be here, and he's from Pakistan, and he was with me in the main room. And just so beautiful to have people from all over the world coming together, all walks of life, all different professions, all different spiritual persuasions. It doesn't matter. We embrace empathy and empaths, and the love of connection here is it's extraordinary. And I want to thank Edwin for being this humble, loving, dedicated, resilient energy that has never made me feel less than for even one moment in all the years that I've been volunteering with him. And I want to thank you. Anybody else have some closing remarks? Kara?
From the volunteers.
Yeah, Kara?
No, I really just want to hear what Michelle's going to say next.
Okay, great. Ruth?
Huge thanks. I appreciate listening to all of your wisdom. Everybody, it's been a joy. Thank you so much.
Jonathan?
This event filled me up with my smiles for the day. I leave, every time I leave one of these circles, I'm smiling. And I want to remind everyone to save your chat. You have to find that three little dots on the chat column and you push save. Thank you.
Thank you. Jana?
Yeah, it was wonderful hearing Judith, and it was wonderful the speakers afterwards bringing the divine into the empathy circle. So I really appreciated the angels and the higher beings and our divine self being spoken of. And as for dead fish, that comes from Linda Bass, who's an empathy circle trainer and mediator. And so that really exemplifies, I think, the genius of empathy was that we can also bring it into conflict and resolve our problems with empathy. So thank you. Thank you for this great summit. Thank you, DJ.
Thank you, Jana. Dr. Cynthia Higgins.
I really appreciate the synergy of everyone here, just holding this remarkable place. We often talk about like the power of meditation being exponential rather than linear. I know the same is true about the energy of love. So just want to thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's all yours now, Michelle.
Okay. So it's going to be a little outside the box, but it's not only going to be 2-3 minutes. What I got the visual of is this beautiful bouquet of flowers and this beautiful like see-through glass with water underneath. And we are all within this. Each of you is like a stem connected to this water. And I just want you to close your eyes for a moment, and I want you to just take a deep breath really quick. And as you take a deep breath, I want you to bring this water in and up and through you. And then I want you to see the very top of this flower just blossom open. Whatever that flower is, whatever it looks like, it's you and a blossom. And keep on absorbing that water and wait until you keep blossoming up and let that shift happen within you. Nice, refreshing, pure, oxygen-filled water. And an expansion and an embodiment of what that is. And we're all in this space together, if you can see. It's all there. Now, if you want to go further, you can look at the sun. You can direct that flower, that opening towards the sun, and bring that into your space as well. Deep breath. Deep breath. Hands to heart. Okay, and we're set. We're set for a little bit. Let this be how you leave today.
Thank you, Michelle. And before we leave, just to give you some next steps, here is some links to the Empathy Center website. That's the site that's behind me. There's a schedule for upcoming empathy circles, and we have an empathy circle facilitation training that we do at the Empathy Center as well as online. And we're looking forward to seeing you here in Santa Barbara in person at the Empathy Center. A bunch of us will be getting together here later in the month on the 18th and 19th. So with that, we like to end with just our applause hands, just a final, and look forward to seeing you next time. Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Bye. Thank you
Bye,
for
everyone.
coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.